Hi there, everyone. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. This is our 42nd. Apologies about the delay. We've been having internet problems. And can you hear me? I don't know, because the intro was very, very quiet. Can you hear me? Just let me know. Hi, Julia. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Lisa from Washington. Lovely to see you all. From Virginia. So just let me know if you can hear me, if the volume is okay. Oh, great. Thank you. Welcome. So sorry about the delay. Good morning to you. Good evening to you. Good afternoon to you, wherever you're from. So let me introduce you to this evening's guest. We're going to the UK, and I'd like to introduce you to Marcus. Marcus, you are so welcome.
Well, what a pleasure, Eimear, and thank you so much for inviting me. I don't feel I deserve it, so it's a joy to be here, and hopefully we can have some fun and a bit of deep and maybe a bit of cheeky conversation. Who knows? Lovely.
And just one thing, people aren't here because they deserve it. People have been interesting, and I don't know you very well. I've met you once. We've had a few conversations, but it's just lovely to have members of the order in conversation. And Ben Stimson says, "Oh, it's Marcus. Hello, Marcus. Nice to see you." So you have one fan anyway to start with. So where are you in the UK?
So I'm in Brighton in East Sussex, and I'm in an area of Brighton called Kemp Town, which is right next to the major hospital here, the Royal Sussex County. And I've got a tough walk of about 200 yards to get onto the beach here. So we have a very large outdoor swimming pool here, which is free all year round.
Wow. And have you been able to swim in it during this past year?
I went in last week for the first time this year, and I made noises that were of a far higher pitch than I normally speak when I got in there. It was.
It must have been cold.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how cold it really was, but to me, I tried to swim for a bit, and I got fully in, but it felt so bitterly cold to me. I wasn't acclimatized to it yet, so I'm going back in gingerly, mind you.
Is that a saltwater pool?
Well, it's called the Channel. Its main name. It's the sea between the south coast and France. So it's a very big pool, and anyone can use it.
Oh, wonderful. So you're in a seaside landscape. So how do you link that with your druidry?
We're very fortunate here because we've quite literally got the land, the sea, and the sky here. And although Brighton is now a city, we are nestled on one side of the South Downs, which is a very beautiful part of the world, and I've got 5 minutes before, a 5-10 minute walk to be out on the hills, looking over the sea and looking at the different parts of Sussex. But it's in easy reach of so many beautiful places, and I'm very lucky. I organise a few walks for a few people on quite a regular basis, and we try to go to lovely places, and we don't have to travel very far to do that.
Do you have any well-known place, like sacred site near you?
We've got quite a few. I mean, we've got the Long Men of Wilmington, which is where the Anderegor said will normally meet, and as far as I'm aware, we're hoping to meet just for a picnic at Lunasol. But there are so many so many barrows and places along the coast. One of the sort of major beautiful places, Kingly Vale, which is just north of Chichester. That's about an hour's drive west of here, and we've got some beautiful, very, very old yew trees there, and it's part of the National Yew Tree Collection. Yeah, and we've got, there's, in Brighton itself, we've got Hollingbury Hill Fort, which is above a golf course at the very top of the hill. We get beautiful views along there. So there's not an awful lot to see there, but you can let the imagination wander. You know, I'm afraid I'm not a historian, so I can't tell you an awful lot about it.
There's Frank Martinez, who was a guest, I think last year actually. Hello, Marcus. Greetings from another edge of the cauldron of the sea. We have land of mountains and redwoods, sea, both Pacific and Humboldt Bay, and the sky. Oh, I've got an echo. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what it is. And this is, thou shalt not covet thy fellow druid megalithic sites. So, I've got an echo, and I don't know why that is. It's strange. Anyway, forgive me for the sound, everybody. Can you hear the echo, Marcus?
I can't hear the echo.
Can our viewers hear it? If it's just me, I can put up with it. So, what brought you to druidry?
Formally, it was in 2002. But for years, I'd been involved in healing groups, and I was okay with that. But I really had an inbuilt fear of being proselytized from an early age, and that was because as a young child, I'd been going to boys' events, which were fantastic, and then the people said, "Well, you've got to this age now, and if you want to carry on enjoying yourself, you've got to go to Sunday school." And I didn't feel that was right. Even at that young age, I felt it was for me to find my faith, not for it to be forced upon me. And so my parents weren't of any faith, and they said, "Well, you don't have to go." And unfortunately, I didn't learn anything about faith, and so I had this inbuilt fear. And in the 70s, we had Dennis Wheatley, and in the Daily Mail and the right-wing newspapers, anything that was non-Christian was Satanism. And we had Tales of the Unexpected, and the Wicker Man wasn't the best press for druidry and paganism, for people not involved in it. And I was very happy to go to UFO evenings, and I'd even witnessed people channeling, and I was perfectly okay with that. But every time a friend of mine said, "Mark, you ought to come to these camps," and I was very right-wing, very up my own English backside, and I thought, you keep your hippie camps to yourself. And in 2002, I ended up being jobless, homeless, and relationshipless within 2 weeks of the start of the new year. And this friend of mine put me up on his sofa in a very pokey little flat in Tunbridge Wells, where there are lots of drug raids going on regularly. But he kept asking me about this, and eventually he said, "Well, why don't you come to one of these camps? And if you don't like it, I'll just take you back." And so I kind of reluctantly agreed. And the camp was a weekend camp, and it was called Space for You. It was organised by the Rainbow 2000 group. And he took me via Avebury Stones, and I was just amazed at his stories and the stories of the stones there. And he wasn't a druid or a pagan. And we went to this camp, and I finally met people who thought in similar ways to me. Nobody of my family or friends believed in anything of, healing or the fact that we're far more powerful than we are led to believe we are. It's the people in power don't like us knowing how powerful we are in a very gentle way. And I felt like I'd come home, and my friend didn't say "I told you so." He just smiled like a Buddha. And it was remarkable, and I enjoyed it so much. I looked at this brochure and found out there was a camp in a couple of weeks' time, and it said art therapy, and I thought, fantastic. Maybe I could do with a bit of therapy. I'll admit it. And so I paid the money, and 2 weeks later I drove the 200 miles there after work. There was about 3/4 of an hour light left, and I arrived at the gate and said, "Hello, I've come for the rainbow camp, for the art camp. This was where the field was last time." And the chap said, "Well, this is the rainbow field." And he said, "What camp have you come for?" And I said, "Well, I've come for the art camp, art therapy." And he looked and said, "I'm terribly sorry. The art camp was last week." And I said, "Oh my God." And he was quite switched on, and he said, "Well, what's your, tell me your name." And he looked the brochure up, and he said, "Well, you've booked this camp." I said, "Really?" And I said, "So what?" And on the sign it said, "Welcome to Bardic Arts." And I said, "Well, what on earth what's Bardic Arts?" And he started to ramble, and every so often I heard the word druid, and what? Music, poetry, trees, creativity, druids. And I just froze. I was still at the steering wheel, and I said, I looked up and I said, "Would you run that by me again?" And he said, "Oh yeah, druids." And I could feel myself gripping the steering wheel, and I had Dennis Wheatley running through my head. Strange sexual practices. Maybe some things are okay, but yeah, odd sacrifices and the Wicker Man running through my head, and I just leant over on the steering wheel and I said, "Did you say druid?" And he carried on speaking. I thought, "Oh my God!" And it was. I was too tired to drive back. I had enough wine to disappear for a weekend, when I thought I'll just go and camp up in the corner and hide. And as I was pitching the tent up, there were 2 people that had been at the previous camp that walked up, and they'd really held me, really on me. And one of the people who was walking up was one of the people that turned out to be one of the organisers for this druid camp. And they welcomed me and hugged me, and I was still very suspicious about the human contact. And I told them my fears, and they said, "Well, there's no pressure to do anything." And because there was no pressure to go in, I felt I could go in and look, and it was very clear that if I didn't like anything, I could walk out at any time. And I had the time of my life. And I was able to get creative, which I had a big old inbuilt fear. I don't know where it came from, of art and creativity. I went and did a meditation walk in the forest, learning how to meditate and breathe, and seeing the light dancing in the canopy. And I became a bird watcher because of that direct experience of that beautiful meditation. And so that then gave me a new hope, a new life hope. And I realized that I've got to find out what's going on locally where I am. And I found people who went on pagan druid walks in the Tom Bridge, TON bridge in the Kent-Sussex-Surrey border in the UK, which is southeast of London by about an hour. And I somehow heard about this gathering on the Long Man, organised by a couple. I don't know where they are now or if they're doing anything. Some guy called Dan the Bard or something like that.
Who knows?
Don't know what happened to him. And Kerry, and it was just the most welcoming group of people, and that was where it started. So in 2002, and it was a magical start, and I can honestly say that the journey has been magical and transformational.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Can you mute while I ask you a question? That might help. Your mute is at the bottom left hand. Ah, great. There's no echo now? Good. Okay. So, how do you, when you discovered your creativity, how did that was, I think, what, a particularly art medium. So how do you now express your creativity, or where do you get your imas or your awen from now?
That really has been with working with people and learning about myself. I'd lived a bit of a dramatic life, if you like, and unnecessarily full of drama, full of accidents and trauma, which I don't know where it came from. And so I've really felt, so when I was young, I had no role models, no positive or negative, and my dream was to be taught by the spiritual equivalent of a samurai warrior. And of course, I eventually came to realize that person was never going to arrive, and it was my journey to realize that myself, and it's a lifetime journey. And so my real Awen Imas, my Awen, it is working with people and planting, not trying to make big adjustments or big transformations, but just helping the people to realize that they can make a huge difference by tiny little adjustments. And I guess I've been working on that for a long time. But I was working on everybody else. Yeah, great at helping other people, and I've worked in rehabilitation for 19 years now, and but of course I didn't help myself, and I think my close friends could see it. They realised what I was kind of punishing myself, and it's a common story, and there's no secret about it. But I was somebody who used alcohol, and it eventually took me a long time and a lot of bouncing, probably 16, 17 years trying to resolve it, and with partial success at best. And now I've very luckily I've found a program that really works for me. So I've been in sobriety for 19 months now, and I'm finding that all the things that I did and I wanted to do are now falling into place, because I've been able to take responsibility for myself at last and start to look after myself. And everything is just so much better and brighter and quite normal. And it's something that I can really appreciate. And so I find that that's taking me this autumn into formal study. So whilst so in my work, I've worked with people in prison for 13 years, working in general rehabilitation, but in the form of teaching people how to write and how to use computers, that sort of thing, how to do things for themselves. And I now work with ex-forces, men and women who've got severe and complete sight loss, and I teach them how to use computers with sight loss and often hearing loss as well. And but behind all of that that's not why I do what I do. To teach somebody how to do something, it's how to work with somebody to help them to find the best part of themselves and to help people be more independent. And so over time, what my aim and plan is to gradually turn it around, so I do more and more of that. So yeah, I'm doing an MA in applied positive psychology this year, so I've got to get it right. So there you go. I've told people now, so I've actually got to do it.
Wonderful. Can you mute again? This is so awkward. Apologies for that. So I'm interested and curious about how your sobriety has freed you up to take better care of yourself, and how does that manifest itself?
Quite simply, I mean, there are reasons for why I did drink, but I was one of the 10% of people who don't realise that actually they have an allergy to alcohol, and that means that where the majority of people can have a drink and just decide not to drink it or put it down and ignore it, as soon as somebody with an addictive issue or alcoholism takes that first drink, there's a chemical change in the brain which means that they're almost compelled to take the first drink and to take the next one and the next one and the next one. And so one is too many and 1,000 isn't enough. But what it's done is it's given me my mornings, my evenings, my days back. It's given me time to think, time to have a daily practice, and to really start to look at what are the things that I've not been doing right. What are the things, not necessarily that are impeding me, but what is it? What can I do to improve my well-being? So just being, not drinking alcohol in the quantities that I was means that I'm an awful lot healthier. And I was fortunate enough that that I'd caused no damage, which is entirely possible. So my clarity of thought, my desire has come back, and I feel alive as a result of it. And I hadn't really felt alive, I don't think, ever. I was certainly a very sickly child and teenager, and an adult for a long time through various health conditions. But now, most of those are, well, they're all managed, and I've even found a chronic health condition has disappeared. So my asthma, which I've had since I was 6 months old, I'm 57 now, it's disappeared in the last few months, which is, unbelievable.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so I can get out and just be active and just take part in life, which for most people seems, well, that's the normal, natural thing. But for people with an addiction, it's a daily battle. and I'm glad to say it's one I'm actually really enjoying.
Can you mute?
Yeah.
Sylvain says, Marcus, your explanation of your experiences with druidry is a great gift. Thank you for sharing, and it brings joy to hear you're really well and healthy. Your journey is a beautiful blessing within the world. Thank you. And then somebody else says, Marcus, this is Blanche. Marcus, as I live and breathe again so soon, how lovely to see you here. I've missed the beginning, but sorry, this is sounding fascinating. Yoss says, you're so brave. It's part of the journey you will stay on. It's lovely to hear your sharing of this. I'm just going to go off screen for a second because I can't read easily on the screen. I'm getting my more computer friendly glasses so that I can actually see this. So you mentioned a daily practice, Marcus. What kind of a practice do you have?
So it's yoga stretches, but when I'm doing that, I'll offer prayers and healing to people during that. And I'll also say the Serenity prayer as well, for a really good daily start. And I quite often, so that really sets me up. And I know that if I don't do the stretches regularly, I get serious hip and back issues through natural spinal conditions. But doing it means that I can go out and do the walking and not suffer. Unfortunately, I did have to give up golf, and I did used to play with Dave, Dan the Bard, and we would play with each other regularly, if you know what I mean, and we would get our balls out in public. So it's something that I miss dearly, and it was a very sad day when I realised that actually, although we had a wonderful time getting completely away from our own worlds when we were just focusing on that one thing. But it was Druid golf. It really was, because Dave would be about to say, take a shot, and I'd say, Dave, and he'd say, yes, Mark. I said, over there, 5 o'clock, marbled white butterfly, and he'd say, whoa, God, Mark, that's beautiful. And I'd be just about to hit a shot, and he'd say, Mark, yes, Dave. He said, 10 o'clock, there's a stag. No way, Dave. And he'd say, yes way, Mark. Good grief. And so it was like that. And so we would have the most beautiful walks together, and fun time, and we'd post silly innuendo afterwards on which a couple of people commented on, and I thought, well, I don't know what you're talking about. It must be your mind.
Well,
but I was
speaking
really...
of such, there's a comment from Will. I'll let you read it yourself, from Ricky, who's always very reverent and full of gravitas.
Yes, he says, such a shame that you and Dave can't whack each other's balls in public anymore. Well, we've got the weekend coming up, so you never know.
Anne Beer says, I love this golf with nature watching. And Penny Billington, I remember being on retreat with her, talking about, we were spotting wonders. I think it's in one of I've forgotten which of the Mabinogion, talking about wonders. And this idea, we often do this, what wonders have you seen? And it's really interesting that you and Dave, while you're golfing, if it's not this marble white butterfly or the stag, and that's just wonderful to be able to spot wonders while you're playing golf. I'm a golf orphan. My mother is 85 and she still plays golf. I have no interest in it. What we say, it's this. Actually, you're the exception to the rule. What do they say? Is it's a good walk that's spoiled, which is golf. But the way you and Dave do it by spotting all these other things is just fascinating. It's lovely to hear it.
Yeah, it was sad, but I've just found out in the last couple of days that Dave has had somebody, a good friend's partner, invited him, and he played a full round of golf with him. So yeah, I'm really pleased for him. I'm sad that we can't play, but really pleased for him.
You mentioned healing as part of your, sending healing, because when I first met you, it was at a rainbow camp, but that was the only camp I've been to, only Druid camp I've been to. I missed the OBOD ones. They were gone by the time I was considering going to camp. And I was really, really impressed because you and Ferdiad were holding the healing tent. And I was so, so impressed with the sacred space you held. I was quite anxious because I didn't know many people, and when you go in, how vulnerable you are to go in for a massage with a stranger, with other people being in the marquee as well, getting treatments. And the person I was assigned was Mouse, and he was just amazing. But I was so impressed with how that was held, because I had gone to the electric picnic that autumn, and there were healing tents there that I couldn't go in because it just didn't feel held. So that's always struck me about you and Ferdiad, about how you could hold that. And that to me is so, so important.
Yeah, we're very blessed. So I went to a lot of the rainbow camps over the years, and found myself doing all sorts of roles. From I would happily do the toilet, clean the toilets, the showers, do the recycling. I work quite a lot of times on the gate, welcoming people, because I know it's so important when people arrive to an event like that can make the difference between an event and something wonderful, just by how you're greeted. So that was really important. That was really passionate. And I remember sitting around a fire a few years back, and people were just having a general chit chat at one of the Druid camps before the day before the event was due to start, and they were asking me that same question you asked me: how did I get into druidry? And they told me, I told them the story, and they said, and I said, you tell an all right story. And hello, what's coming up here? And they asked me to be the MC for the Eisteddfod, which I then did for several years. And when I started doing it, people were talking in the marquees over the people who were getting up, sometimes for the first time, and it was a massive thing. So I gradually got people to realise that, by people giving their full attention and recognising the people on stage in the first time, they could change somebody's life. Whereas if they talk over them, they might put somebody off for life. But there may be a hidden talent sitting at one of those tables watching what's going on. And if they feel that the people on stage are really well received with love and compassion, it might just inspire that hidden talent to burst forth. And my gosh, we saw some wonderful, unexpected talent there. You just never know who's with you and what they can do, and it was just such a joy to do that, and that things evolved, and eventually Ferdiad asked me if I'd coordinate the healing tent with him, which was an absolute honour and a joy. And so for my personal work, I listen to people, and at times I'm clairaudient, so I can hear the messages that people's own soul have to give to them, but they can't hear, and they need a transmitter or a radio to tune in to feed it back to them. And I can hear by people's own use of thought and language where they're holding themselves back. And so I would look at reframing that. So I would just really check in with people and see, you know, where are you? Yeah, where are you? And if it was you, Eimear, I'd say, where's Eimear? Where are you now? And something would allow something to happen and to flow, and we would then heal that, possibly with some NLP if there were some fear issues, and just to allow the person to walk away with something that they could carry wherever they went, to remove a fear of whatever, fear of going on stage or meeting somebody. And I would finish that with the hands-on healing. And I'd been healing for a long time, but I have studied as a Reiki master twice over. Just and not because, you know, that's to do, but I found it was a really useful structure. So a nice structure, and I redid it a second time just to keep my hand in, because I don't practice it formally on a regular basis, so it's not an income stream of mine. So but it gets used, you know. I use it every day as far as remote healing is concerned, for the highest good, and very occasionally it's usually at a camp when I would offer that to people who want or needed it.
Gabriella says, you could totally work as an experienced designer, Marcus, aka create experiences for people. Your highly sensitivity to details is key. And I think, you know, as we know, central to druidry is one of the key points is being of service. And certainly, you know, what we've been talking about since we've started our conversation is how you've been of service to people in your, you know, you've discovering your own strengths. You're very soft-spoken and you come across as very gentle. So it's never pushed, but your availability is very clear. Your availability to the other person. So it's just lovely to hear how you, in a very simple, gentle way, are of service, and how you work with your druidry to be of service.
Yeah, completely, and I can say without any shadow of doubt that the rainbow camps, the druid camps, and particularly Dave and Kerry's and Derrida camps, when they ran, they were really absolutely transformational. In so many ways, we really, there was a lot of amazing experiences and psychology as well, but in very gentle ways. And those camps no longer exist at the moment, but there was absolute magic there, and it was very odd how anytime we got any really inclement weather, typically the camp arrival would be on a Friday night in a field in East Sussex with a little brook running around it, and cows lowing everywhere, and we even had a species, a Bulgarian laughing frog population in the area, which just sounded like lots of cackling. And but this field became magic, because when we walked into the field, we'd make sure the field was absolutely tidy, that there was nothing there that wasn't meant to be in the field. And the last thing we did was make sure it was even better than when we arrived there in the first place. But so the Friday night was a arrive, get together, sing song around the campfire, and the Saturday would be essentially a build up to a ritual which started at 8 o'clock and usually finished about 10 o'clock, and then it would carry on around the campfire, and the energy would kind of around the campfire would depend on that. But one particular energy, we had a thick fog all day, and we didn't know how quite it was going to work out, but on the strike of 8 bells of the evening, the mist cleared around us and encircled us, and as soon as the ritual finished, it closed back in. And I couldn't prove that scientifically that magic happened, but I know that the power of the intent and the unconditional love and beauty of the people that facilitated it, because Dave and Kerry would kind of lead it, but they would have a major team, and typically it was the people who help out at the OBOD gatherings in Glastonbury. So that same crew, and what a lovely job they do, looking after people, making sure they're kept refreshed. And
absolutely, it's your story about the mist. I've experienced that many times, that where it's raining. We've had horizontal rain at the winter solstice, and just before we go out to have our ceremony, it stops. And then at the end, it starts again. I've done it for hand fastings. It's just amazing how, well, I never ask for it not to rain, but I give thanks to the rain. And then I thank in advance because it'll hold off so we can have our ritual in comfort. Because if it's raining, well, we'll manage in the rain. Nothing stops us. And how it holds off, and experiencing that with gratitude. And that's magic. And again, we can't prove that, but it's happened so many times for me to know that that's what happens. So generally I'm not anxious about what the weather is going to be. But that's such a lovely story, that magic mist just opening and then closing. It's just wonderful. Blanche Rowan says, so fascinating, Marcus. This is such a privilege to learn so much about someone. You greeted me at my first long man ritual, and your welcome made all the difference.
I'm touched. I'm absolutely touched and humbled. Yeah, I have to say that it's been such a blessing and a privilege to meet so many amazing people. Every person you meet through this path are fascinating, and I think what it does as well is it stimulates a curiosity, and the more we learn about other people and the more we become interested, the more we set the opportunity for that own interest to enter our lives. And I find it absolutely fascinating. I would quite like to turn the tables around and find more about yourself. But maybe that's for another day.
Another time.
Yeah, I know.
Some people are asking, John says, I wish I could have gone to one before they ended. And Tara, I think Tara's in New York. Will there be camps again someday? I assume they're stopped now because of, there's the rainbow camps still go. Well, assuming when things are freed up again with COVID. And then there are the White Horse camps that organized. They're not OBOD camps, but they're organized by OBOD members. So there are camps there still. Well, I assume they haven't been, I don't know if they've been happening because of COVID, but hopefully that they will be able to resume again. So
yeah, it's not I haven't been to any of the White Horse camps, but now that my life is in a different form, it's something that I would consider. The rainbow camps are on in a different form, so the organisation had a bit of an implosion, shall we say. As often happens with large groups and organisations. And I think when the chap that used to really hold them, which was Sid Rawls, who was a very famous free festival organiser in the late 60s and 70s, and when he died, he got 2-page census spreads in the Guardian, the Time, and the like. So he was well known. I mean, he was no angel at times, but he could hold these wonderful camps. But when he knew he was going to die, and I spoke to him 2 days before, and you could just tell that he was putting things into place which nobody would do in the normal day-to-day course of life. He was preparing to die, and he did, and he had such a huge spark. It was very difficult for that to follow. But what happened a couple of years ago was that the people who were involved in the healing area decided to help out, and now they run a summer camp on their own, and they've rekindled all the original values about tribe and making sure that everyone is safe, everyone's vulnerable, and we're going to have a fantastic time, but we're not out for a drink and drugs party, which some of the camps did lean towards. I've been a bit guilty of that myself. So, but I ran the gate for them the year before last, and on their first camp, and it really worked. And there were a lot of faces who hadn't been for a long time, and so you could. I mean, druidry is a wonderful thing because it can incorporate and encapsulate people of all walks of life, faiths and none, and this felt like the way a druid camp ought to be organised. So the people, everybody looking after each other. And making sure it's a wonderful, safe space to enjoy yourself, and to look after the people who need looking after. So I'm lucky. I'm going to be going back to. I'm going to that camp as a paying punter for the first time ever, because I've always worked it. But I can't help myself. I'm going to be offering to do. I've already offered to do something. So, but I do hope that there are other druid camps come about, and in fact, when we couldn't organise the camps, we realised that there were people who only knew each other through druid activity, druid events, druid camps, but we didn't know each other outside of that. So we set up this very small camp called Chill and Skill Fest, with the idea that we would all come to this campsite with no plans at all, but we would bring something along that we could offer it, even if it was just our company. And people bought, knitting, creativity, and instruments, and just a very small group had a lovely time. We decided to rename it Tea Fest because the chill in Chill and Skill Fest was a bit too chilly. So that's something that we've run for about a dozen people twice a year for several years as well. So, but hopefully we'll be able to start getting back to those sort of events that are absolutely life-changing when you get a concentrated special time. We do collective work together to transform for the greater good. And I've been going to them for 20 years now, and so I've seen people's children grow up and become, learn from and feel free to play in those, especially the Anderida environment. And some of those young people, well, all of those young people have become really lovely young adults, and all have creative spark, which I've no doubt comes from the collective creativity in those camps, whether it's pure art, painting, poetry, singing, guitar. There's plenty of musicians. So, and I know that the average age of the Druid was creeping up, but seeing the younger people coming into that now, I think that there's hope that they'll at some point they'll realise that they'd like to do something similar and carry that forward. And so it's almost as if we're creating a living legacy.
We did an earlier guest, Ellie Talent, and she was talking about saplings and sowing seeds and encouraging young people. And Larissa White, who's done the World Druidry Survey, and she's going to be a guest soon on this Fireside Chat. And I was looking at her distribution in terms of the people who answered her survey. I don't know if many of our viewers took part in that survey. She's also our this year's Mount Hemus Scholar. And in that, it's about how Druids work with the Wheel of the Year. But she like, when you look at the age range, it's represented by the bell curve, the normal curve. So there's obviously a cohort of people in the middle, but then there are younger people and then there are older people. So I think, it's going to, it seems to follow a normal trend. So hopefully we'll get more and more younger people to join us. Speaking of bardic arts, etc., are you ready to sing a song?
Yeah, I can give a go. I decided that I wasn't going to do it because I don't play that often, but I thought I might try and inflict something that I'd written on people and just see how it goes, see if I can regain my practice and just really get back into it. So I really like to noodle. So yeah, I'll grab my guitar and my words. It might actually this might actually answer a question that you're probably going to ask later on. So just talk amongst yourselves for a second.
I don't know if my echo is gone. It has. Anyway, there are lots of people looking forward to hearing you. No pressure, Marcus. Anne Beer says it's always wonderful when music is part of the chat, and I agree. And it's to encourage people to express themselves. And what a better place than online with lots of people all over the world listening to you. Anyway, so when you're ready.
Okay, so surprisingly for a druid, this is called Sarwen. I'm looking to the west, the sun is in my eyes. I'm hoping for a rest, knowing where the sky sails. I breathe so many breaths, searching for wisdom. I've walked so many paths, is that my horizon? Hello, light, spirits, ancestors, can you see me? Can we talk what I have seen with you. Can we touch again through this and veil of somewhere? Can we touch again through the mist and veil again? Lessons I have learned, bridges I have burned. I yearn to share with you, and I'd like to ask of you. How did you pass by into summer rain, into the sky? How did it feel for you? Can you tell me that it's true? Do I survive? Hello, guides, ancestors, can I see you? Can we talk? Can I share what I have seen with you? Can we touch again through the mist and veil of somewhere? Can we touch again through the mist and veil again? Please send me a sign that crosses both our times. I wanna know it's true, I will be with you. If I can speak to Joan of Arc, see Jesus in the park. Can I see? Why can I see through the door? Hello, guidance, ancestors, can I see you? Can we talk? Can I share what I've seen with you? Can we touch again through the mist and veil of somewhere? Can we touch again through the mist and veil again? Oh.
It's wonderful, Marcus. Is that one of your own songs?
Yeah.
Wow. You've never sung at an Eisteddfod in Glastonbury?
No. I just sing a very silly song at Anderida.
Okay.
The Anderida Festival a couple of years ago, and I'd got this reputation for singing a very silly, boyish song about squashing butterflies and leaving things on windowsills that you shouldn't do, and people started to get upset if I didn't sing it around the campfire because it was a call and response thing. Just, I mean, as foolish as it comes. And Dave said, "Oh, Mark, I want you to do your song at Anderida Fest." And I thought, oh, right. And there's something very different about standing up on stage and he said, well, to save you, don't bother plugging your guitar, use mine, and I'll do that. And then about And he said, "Oh, you're going on about half an hour in," and then he came up and said, "Change plan. You're opening the event." And I wanted to question his parentage at that point, and so anyway, this song's called "On the Windowsill, John," and I walked up onto the stage, and it's a very high stage, so you're completely exposed and you feel very naked. And I don't remember lyrics very well, so I had my lyrics there, and I opened them, and to my horror, I brought the wrong lyrics, and I didn't realise the mic was switched on. I thought, oh my God, I don't know where my lyrics are. And I had in the audience all shout out, "On the windowsill, John!" And so I was carried. And yeah, so that's my claim to fame, singing a stupid song in front of 200 druids.
Well, Valentina Bernardi, who was my guest last week, she says she loves that song. So, when you see yourself as an ancestor, how do you, I mean, and a future ancestor, how do you take that responsibility, or how do you embody that, being an ancestor of the future?
I think it's just continually working on offering a shoulder and an ear and solace and a way forward. So I know what it's like to suffer and experience major trauma, and I think because of that, I'm actually blessed to have survived on many occasions, and I can so I can see when I ask somebody how they are, I know before I ask how they are, but I want to give them the opportunity, if it's there, if they need it, to call. Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to think of the female singer who sang, "Just call out my name and I'll be there."
Carly Simon?
No, she wrote Carole King.
Carole King.
It's on Tapestry. And so I'd like to, of course we don't know till we get there. Our brains aren't powerful enough to be able to experience that thing. And of course, when we're born, it's very rare for us to be able to reincarnate the knowledge that we've taken from a previous life. The child's brain just isn't big enough to cope with that, and so we don't know how we'll be when we go. But and if there's nothing there, whether there's nothing on the other side, when my body gets to be recycled, whatever happens to whatever's left, if there's something active and positive that I can do in that plane, that experience, to work with people in that plane and people back on this plane, then that would be an honor. I would love to perhaps be that guide. But the human being and the human brain is absolutely phenomenal. And in terms of damage, we discovered something called the human mirror neuron that can take over when we have damage, and it can start to repair and learn new ways. And we found that in facial recognition. So where people have lost their ability for facial expression through brain injury, and so they end up with a permanent frown which they can do nothing about. What scientists have discovered by observing other animals, and particularly monkeys, and they realized that when they were shelling peanuts, one would watch and then would learn how to do it vicariously, and through probably unfortunate scientific means, they've discovered that this was through something called the mirror neuron in the brain, and we humans have that as well. And so we're able to learn vicariously. But they did wonder if we're able to do that, learning that vicariously, and that is a separate part of the normal learning brain function, or part of the brain that learns, that what we've found is by using sound and using a model of a face which moves, and actually they used the one from the Doctor Who series that was featured in the 1980s. There was a head with a glass back with the electronics, and that simulates facial movement. And they found that if they put electrodes on the part of the person's face who'd lost their facial recognition, and then played particular notes, and then moved that facial recognition, got that person to touch it, it wouldn't relearn it, but they would be learning a new skill from a different part of the brain. And when I saw that talk where I work, as part of the research team, I was absolutely blown away, because at the time I'd suffered a major bodily. I suffered a terrible knife attack, and I just survived it. But I'd lost a lot of all the feelings in my hands and arms.
Wow.
And I couldn't hold a guitar at all. But what I was realizing as I was coming out of this trauma, that my brain was picking up other things, and I'd forgotten. There were lyrics which I couldn't remember at all, and so but it was really inspiring. It gave me food for thought, and I thought, I'm just going to keep picking my guitar up every day. And I was able to pick it up for 5 minutes in real agony, but in both arms and shoulders. And after 18 months, suddenly that 5 minutes went to 30 minutes. And I thought, wow. And after a little while longer, it went on to 40 minutes and 45. And now I can play for however long I want to play. And so we have this ability to regenerate. And I think we have that ability with our emotions if we're shown the right guidance, and if we've got people there to be our guides. Because I'm starting to get to the age now where maybe I can start to be that guide a bit more. And so,
Ben has a question. Ben Stimson, do you think we can heal our ancestors in that way, by being the model they can vicariously learn from?
That's I like that question. I think in a way, we are our ancestors, because we bring so much of life experience, positive and negative, is born out in our heirs. And that can be whether it's from a family, through direct family, and also through the people that those children interact with, their teachers, their role models, and so forth. So in a way, I would answer it by saying that we have the ability to heal our ancestors' legacy and move forward if we're mindful of that, and that is not everybody's jobs, to do, of course, because we need all sorts of people, and I'm learning tarot,
Mhm.
which happens to fit in with what I'm doing, and also in terms of study, because there's a lot of psychology based in tarot, and particularly the Myers-Briggs personality types can be seen in the court cards. And so I think we can do it, and I suppose I wonder whether those ancestors are looking down and hoping that they're learning from that. Almost a bit like what's happening with the England football team at the moment.
I'm not a follower.
Sorry, that's probably a bit abstract, and it would only be understood by the people that follow it. But we have a manager who has been really healing, using healing methods to really bring character and strength into this team, which we haven't seen the like of in many of our lifetimes. And what we now see is very, very positive, very strong individuals that are also very, very compassionate in what they do, and they all care. We see the entire England squad taking the knee for Black Lives Matter at the start of all their games. We see them the captain wearing a rainbow armband for LGBTQI issues, and we see young men, young footballers, of ethnic backgrounds challenging our politicians and being listened to by the entire country, because we're starting to realise that we're not hearing the right things to look after ourselves that we all need to do. And I think it feels as though we're in a real life version of the Lord of the Rings. The forces of dark and evil are amassing, but so are the forces of good. And it feels like we're in that sort of classic journey. But whilst we perhaps can't fight those battles ourselves, what we can do is always make a difference in our world, and that can, no matter how tiny, and that might be just avoiding treading on a wildflower when we're walking through the grass, or being mindful of the insects and the fauna that are around us. It could be as simple as that, but just adopting a caring, compassionate and kind attitude for everyone, including ourselves, of course. Because as I've finally come to realise after a long time, without care for yourself, you can't properly care for others, and it's not selfish, it's selfless. So I hope that answers that question in a very long roundabout way.
Anne Beer says, how good to hear about the English team showing this leadership.
Yes, I think it's going to fire up the passions on late Sunday afternoon. I know that. So it's lovely when we have this collective hope together. It doesn't matter it's football or rugby or Andy Murray in the tennis, or all the female golfers and cricketers. And of course, it's really lovely to see that the press and the media showings that they're now getting, and it's lovely to see that we've got the female sports reporters and presenters now really showing their equality and the passion and knowledge, and giving some of us blokes a run for our money, which we've needed for a long time. And long may it continue.
So how do you honour the ancestors?
It's in my certainly it's going to all the Wheel of the Year celebrations and doing that, and it's usually collectively. But I do ask for guidance every day. So it's an honouring in respecting and asking for their help, and hopefully my way of honouring that is to live as honourable a life as I can. I'm not perfection. I'm work in progress, and will always be. But I'll aim high. Yeah.
Great. I suppose you've probably spoken of this, but the biggest challenge you've overcome. I don't know if that has been your alcohol consumption or.
I think it's just been recognizing the enormity of life, and realizing that actually when we keep it really simple, it doesn't need to be complicated, and that has been my challenge. My challenge has been a life challenge. So at the moment it's a purple patch, and I can really enjoy the joy of normality. So I think that it's been a life challenge, getting over myself, stepping aside and letting me get on with it and stop getting in the way.
Absolutely. What's the most reckless thing you've done?
I've never done anything reckless.
Okay.
I would say probably. I used to ride motorcycles, and I worked in North Yorkshire and commuted at the weekend to either go there or come back, and it was 270 miles, and I managed the journey home in 2 hours 33 minutes, including 3 stops for petrol. And so it's kind of crazy, but I was riding back one evening, and I went from Harrogate is in North Yorkshire, in the north part of England in the UK, and it was about a 15-mile ride to get onto the main A road, main trunk road, back down south, and I was doing just under 140 miles an hour, and I went down a beautiful dip which came up and swung right, and I hadn't realised that there'd been roadworks, and I hit a ramp, and I went flying through the air 135, 140 miles an hour, and I overtook a car in the air. And I went over that car and landed in front of him. Somehow landed straight. I think somebody was looking after me, and pulled up a little way further, probably about 40 miles the speed I was going, and thought, my God, that was lucky. I'll never do that again. And I swear now I'm going to stick to 70 miles an hour everywhere I go. And I lasted until, so I got home fine. On the next journey on the way back, a 1000cc sports bike came hurtling past me, made me look like I was standing still. And I thought, what the hell? So I was a naughty motorcycle rider. I only had 2 throttle positions, and that was open or closed. And I'm very fortunate to have survived.
Yes, someone was looking after you.
Numerous times, I can tell you.
What are you grateful for?
So many things. I'm really grateful for being alive. I'm really grateful for all my friends, family, colleagues. So that the people in the AA, so the program I'm in is AA, which is based on service, surprisingly. So I'm really grateful to have that opportunity. I guess it's so many things. I feel that I'm living, I'm so lucky to have survived this long, so many times. I've had so many near-death experiences, and spiritual, major spiritual experiences that I'm grateful for all of those, and I'm just really grateful to be here. But I'm most of all, I suppose, I'm grateful to be in service. That's what works for me, and I'm very grateful to be here as well.
You mean right now? Okay, that's wonderful. You mentioned you've had many spiritual experiences. Would you be happy to share one of those?
Yeah. So I've had several experiences like this. One of them, so in the song I mentioned Joan of Arc and seeing Jesus in the park, and I'm not religious or have any strong connections to the prophets or to Jesus or to God, but I do have my beliefs. But I knew that one day that I had to get to Rouen on the Seine, southwest of Paris. Rouen is Rouen, to go and see where Joan of Arc was interred, and it was a driven thing. It was an absolute compulsion, and so I made the journey. I caught the ferry from near Brighton down to Dieppe in Normandy, caught the train down, and when I arrived in Rouen, there was a little guide, which is you could do the Joan of Arc tour around the city, and I found myself looking at it, at this guide, and thinking, well, she was all right here, she was all right there, she was all right here, and I thought, wait, where's this coming from? And I went to the first tower where she was held, and I thought, and I knew the conversations she was having, and I knew that actually she was absolutely passionate. And I didn't know her story. I'd seen the film as a child. That was it, and everything that was coming through. It was as if the Dr. Rowan Williams, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, talks about the fact that buildings can take an imprint of humans that are there. And so where it was coming from, I don't know, but I knew the conversation that she was having, and how convinced she was that she was going to keep her faith, and she knew what was coming. And I followed her trail, and could feel how she was at each point. But when I got to where she was burned at the stake in the centre of the city, they had the people had built a very angular Catholic church, and I knew that wasn't where I was going to experience whatever it was I was going to experience. So I went to the Cathedral de Notre Dame, the Cathedral of Our Lady. I walked in through the north entrance, and as soon as I walked in, I was rooted to the spot, and I was completely overcome with emotion. And it took about 5 minutes to be able to stop the crying, and I'd experienced this before, and so I knew what was going on. I'd experienced it twice before, and I walked. Now the cathedrals in France are enormous, and there's a lot of them, And I walked through chapel after chapel after chapel trying to find her. And I was just about to leave. I spent 3/4 of an hour walking through trying to find the Joan of Arc chapel. And I was just about to leave because I couldn't find it. And I felt this tug on the back of my shirt, and I was dragged back 25, 30 yards, pulled backwards and dumped on this chair, pushed back. And I looked up, and there was the statue of Joan of Arc. And the messages that came from her were absolutely key to my life at that particular point.
Wow.
And I've had other similar experiences with that, and as well as the hearing people's inner voices as well. And each time it's happened, it's been these words coming to my head. I don't know where they come from, and I just this might sound a bit weird, but does this mean something to you? And they sort of look at me with jaws on the floor, saying, "How the blooming heck!" I didn't swear, I nearly did. "Did you know that?" And I'd say, "Well, I didn't. It's you that's talking." And so, but I don't think it's that I'm psychic in a kind of woo-woo way. I think that we've all got this ability, but some of us are less practiced in it than others. As you would do perhaps in tarot, you know, the person who can develop their intuition through long-term practice, and the better they know the cards and the various meanings and symbolism behind it, it gives them more time for their intuition to come out and play, and we can use that. But so I know that we don't need tarot cards. And I can look at people's tattoos and translate them and tell them what they mean. So those are the sort of spiritual experiences, and they do give me faith, and I do know that I have been in all the events where I've had near-death experiences, that I have been looked after, and it's absolutely amazing. So I'll share this briefly, but this dreadful attack that happened to me about 7.5 years ago. I was stabbed multiple times, a random but premeditated attack by somebody with severe psychosis and drug issues. But that person stabbed me in a sort of roundhouse stab with a huge kitchen knife right in the centre of my chest. And I can just remember looking down and just seeing a film set and saying to this chap, "What the bloody hell have you done?" But it was witnessed that when this happened, I went down like a sack of potatoes, and they swore that I was dead at that moment. And they don't know how I got up and stood up, and I don't remember that. And I knew then that I had to be very wily. This guy wasn't going to give up, and I was a large man wearing Crocs without socks who had to get away from this very tall 22-year-old built like a brick outhouse. And I came to a crossroads. I mean, this was a literal crossroads that we hear about, and I knew I couldn't go back because he was behind me. I knew I couldn't go up because it was uphill, or to go left and uphill, because I wouldn't have the strength. I knew I was going to collapse at some point very soon, and I couldn't go straight on because that was where we'd come from. So I took the decision to go down the hill and hope for the best. And that was where the last of the stabbing took place, and when I collapsed. And it turned out that I collapsed in front of the busiest, in front of a surgery at its busiest time. And everybody came round. The ambulance crew were around the corner. The air ambulance was already in the air nearby. The investigating officers who were doing a drugs raid around the corner. And it was as a direct result of that I survived to being there. So I know that those spiritual experiences exist, and I knew that actually it wasn't my time, that there was something that I had to learn and understand from that. And actually what it's done, I work with a lot of people with quite major trauma, obviously having worked in the forces and had done as well in the prison service, because there's a lot of trauma there, both with the prisoners and the staff as well. So in a strange way, that the pain of those experiences has actually meant that there was opportunity for enlightenment, and knowing that I could use those experiences to inform my life and what I do. And everybody else was in absolute panic at the time, and I was quite calm and okay about it. So so here I am, still here.
Can you mute? Amanda asks, how do you integrate that stabbing experience with your everyday? How do you fit in with people after that?
I think one of the things, compassion was really important, and that I knew that nobody does anything like that without pure damage. It wasn't a personal thing. I could have been anybody. So that was okay, but I did have quite severe post-traumatic stress disorder, and I did go through a program and was really helped with that, and that treatment worked. So I can choose to recall any part of that situation now without any problem at all. But what it does is there's something about the language of people who've been through trauma, and their gait, the way they carry themselves, the way that they discuss things, that I can really pick up on. And when I see that, if I know it, I somehow seem to attract those people, and they do seem to come my way, and people open up. And at work they call me Weird Mark, because of the things that people open up with me. And when people start telling me about paranormal experiences, I have to rein it in a bit and just remind them that we're in a professional situation, and if you say those sort of things to some people, they might have a concern for it. So you might want to be mindful of that. So at times I have to wind it in, but it does mean that I can have fascinating conversation with people, deeper, and as you probably get, that I'm deeper than the deepest deep thing. And then when you get there, I go deeper for a while, and before I go deep, and then go really deep. And my astrology chart sort of backs that up, really. So I'm a double Scorpio, so Scorpio rising and Scorpio sun sign as well, with a fair bit of Scorpio in. So it's through just everyday conversation. I don't need to integrate it because or help it fit in, because it's just one of those things that happened along the way, and it's just part of life experience, and it's allowed me to see other things and become aware of some of, not all of them, but some of life's intricacies and complexities. And occasionally I can just light a match in the darkness.
It's wonderful that that you can find the gift in these experiences and the transformative piece in these experiences to learn compassion. Because so many people who experience trauma are often stuck in victimhood and in so much of their pain that they haven't been able to resolve. And it's fascinating how you have, and working through your PTSD, obviously getting the right care and the right support to help them, and then how you can then use your own experience to recognize it in others and to offer compassion. That's we have the Irish word for gift or prize or reward is dush, but it also refers to terror and gloom and bad experience, that somehow within trauma or terror or gloom or trial, tribulation, there is a gift, there is joy, there's some reward. It's not an easy thing to see that when you're experiencing it at the time. Obviously, you need a certain length of time to be able to come through that, to be able to, on reflection, to see the gift in it. So I think you've been blessed that you've been able to see that. Not everybody is as blessed. Andrew Moore says you're a true inspiration.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's what I guess is in the human condition, that there's you get to the point where you can't do the things that you used to be able to do, but what you can do with your experience is to share that, and maybe offer a little bit back. So you're and there's a joy when you can see it. I mean, it was quite it was really challenging in the prison service, because I had a huge turnaround. So there would be 450 people each year that I would teach, and 450 people there would be a turnover of that many people because of the environment that I worked in. So the average I would work with people would be about 6 weeks, and so it's a very short time. But what me and a couple of people did was create a workshop for up to 55 prisoners, and we fully integrated it. So we would have sex offenders in amongst the main population, which is an absolute no-no. But what we did was we worked with the men, and we did have some trans gender people in there as well, and we would make it so that this was a study stroke work-based environment which was owned by them, so that it was up to them to effectively manage it with us as chairman, if you like. And when the people would come in, we would say, look, you have a choice. You in order to find respect for yourself, you're going to need to have a respect that you don't know what anybody else has done. And if I go into the workplace, I don't, or any workplace, I don't know what people have done, what they're really like, but I can have the professional courtesy and courage to work with people and let the judgment subside, so that we can collectively do something together. And it worked. It really worked. And that expanded to the prison service around the country. But we had the largest number of people. Nowhere else would run would have often 50 prisoners in the same room, all of mixed offences, yeah. But it shows what you can do if you care, and they say anything's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we're remarkable creatures when we when we get on the right side of things, and just ask that we can be the best person we can today, each day, the best version of myself. So hopefully that's something that I will do each day and continue today. I can't do everything, but I can maybe make a tiny little bit of difference somewhere, and if that helps, great. And even better if I never know about it.
Indeed. I mean, it's about one small step. What's the smallest step you can take? Half that to make an impact in your life, whatever it is. It's always and from that it grows. We're coming close to the end of our time. So one question, what concerns you about the modern world?
I think a lack of concern.
Mm-hmm.
And the hope is, in this lack of concern and this almost willingness to accept that whatever the people in open quote power close quote choose to do and throw in our faces, and of this beautiful place that we all share. And the concern is that there's such a large structure to keep us away from making this world a safe and beautiful place for everybody. That is my concern.
Mm-hmm.
that we don't keep that up. But that would also lead into my hope as well, and the hope that we inspire people to be able to make a difference wherever they are and whoever they are, however little that is.
Mm-hmm.
And that so that we build, and I feel that is building. So I do have hope, but I don't. The concerns are minor, but because I can't affect all the major changes, what I can do is affect small changes in,
Mm-hmm.
in the part of life that I find myself in.
It's interesting. Andrew Moore says sharing trauma stories are so impactful. It helps others with trauma come to accept their own journeys. So I think, in a sense, just even like our conversation this evening can bring hope.
I mean, I'm very, I would agree with that. I'm very lucky. I decided, so when I was injured 7 years ago, I was going to post my trauma journey on social media, and all the experiences, warts and all, and the issues with alcohol as well. And because people weren't talking about it collectively, it was still really the overall discussion with mental health we have now is fantastic, and the way it's becoming integrated and becoming a normal part of society. It wasn't quite like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was being there, and I thought, well, I'm just going to see what difference I can make. And so I would post this every so often, and I put a note up saying, look, if you don't want to read this, this is a bit of trauma journey, so just flick past it if you don't want to. But people did keep saying, please keep posting, because it's, some of us aren't in a position to be able to speak about the issues that we have or having or have had. But the fact that one person is talking about it gives other people hope that they, said, we see you talking about it, maybe we can do that as well, and start to normalize it.
Mm-hmm.
And also so that people didn't say, oh, oh, there's Mark, I wonder how he is. And, oh, he got stabbed, didn't he? And so and by just putting it out in the open, you're just dropping all those awkward conversations that people, I mean, they might still have them, I don't know, but we prepare the ground for openness towards mental health. And I know certainly in probably the last 18 months of my alcoholism, I had the trauma had dealt with, but I was getting more and more significant work stopping anxiety and panic attacks that were increasing.
Mm-hmm.
And my doctors and physicians thought that it was my trauma coming back, and that I was drinking to self-medicate from that. So I wasn't going out and partying. I was drinking behind a curtain,
Mm-hmm.
on my own. And I ended up with a total mental health breakdown that involved mental health services, the police. Although I didn't self-harm, people were concerned that I was having suicidal thoughts that I couldn't get rid of, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to commit suicide. And I had decided to turn myself into A&E when the police turned up at work and had heard from my family, and they instead of taking me to A&E, because they said probably don't want to go there. However, in Brighton we have this new emergency mental health service, which is really safe, and you might want to try that first if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that when that happened, I knew that I would have to. I knew I had to stop drinking. I think I'd hit my rock bottom. And since I stopped drinking, I've had one minor anxiety moment, which was about 3 months in to when I first stopped, and now I don't get anything at all.
Wow.
But a lot of that is because I work a program that works with your thinking. So
Mm-hmm.
the issue is not the alcohol; it's your thinking about life, the world, and the universe. That's the important thing. So so I've cleaned my side of the street, and I know that I can help other people in that journey as well. So the sharing of story amongst people who have experienced similar thing is an enormous benefit to people in that situation, to whatever that might be.
It's absolutely story. To mute again. Your story is absolutely fascinating because you speak with such openness and honesty. It's so refreshing to hear that, and we've come to the end. So thank you so much for sharing that. Because it's very, very personal stuff. But I know from the comments of the viewers that they really, really appreciate that. I know I've spoken. What's your favorite season? So I mean, I think your favorite festival is Samhain, but your favorite time of the year, as a final question.
Whatever day I'm in at the time.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, Marcus, thank you so much for being an absolutely wonderful guest. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for coming on and for singing and playing your guitar and sharing your story. So I'm just going to close you off, but I'll just say goodbye to everybody. And so hang on there. So thank you all very much for being here today and for your comments. And I really, really appreciate that. So I look forward to seeing you next week for another Fireside Chat. And so enjoy the rest of your evening or day or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And slán go fóill and mind yourselves. Okay.